Good evening, everybody. We'll begin tonight's meeting. For our listening audience, this is the meeting of the School Building Committee for the Lowell High School project. You're going to have to let us know what's the funny stories, okay? No, that's okay. But tonight's meeting on the Lowell High School project. Before we take the roll call, I'd like to acknowledge Senator Dunner, who is here, new city manager. Welcome. All right, Heather, please call the roll.
Mayor William Samaras.
Here.
City Manager Kevin Murphy. Councilor Rodney Elliott. Here. Councilor Edward Kennedy.
Here.
State Representative Ratty Mom. School Committee Member Connie Martin.
Here.
Connor Baldwin.
Here.
Marianne Bellata.
Here.
Brian Barry. David Beatty. Nicholas Bastinetto. Head of School Marianne Bustede.
Here.
James Cook. David Cunningham.
Here.
Gary Frisch.
Here.
Robert Healy.
Here.
Superintendent Salah Kalfoui. Jay Mason.
Here.
Maria Sheehy. Richard Underwood. Mike Vaughn.
Here.
All right, thank you, everybody. We have a lot of information to go through tonight. Of course, there'll be an opportunity for the committee to ask questions on each level that we go through. We do have a listening audience here tonight, but at the close of the meeting, before I close out the meeting, if the general public has any questions, I'll allow that to be asked. Okay, our first part of the program is the revised educational plan and Bob Bell from Perkins Eastman will give it. Bob?
Great, thank you. As most of you may know, the educational program was revised based on the fact that the building has changed sites and the MSBA has made the determination that a pool cannot be part of the project. So we presented a week ago to the school committee to affirm or effectively revote approval of the educational program changes as well as the companion space summary. These are, for those of you that are not aware, the educational program is a written narrative that describes the goals and objectives for the school project, and the space summary is a manifestation of calculable rooms and requirements that goes along with it. So what we highlighted for the school committee, and I will do just in overview fashion here, is that we, on pages 26 and 27 and 41 of the prior ed program, we removed references to the pool. We also, on pages 29 through 30, added an additional description of adaptive PE, sensory motor space, as well as on page 33, a more clarification of ROTC classroom spaces. Those were important because at the time that we were refining the ed program, the MSBA was putting pressure on the idea of co-locating special education space as well as ROTC space with a gymnasium, giving us a net effect of what could be deemed a field house size space. So we did that very deliberately to create more flexibility and adaptability for the city, for the athletics programs as well as the community. And I'll provide an update on that in just a moment. But those were additional clarifications we made, as well as on page 42 and 43 of that ed program, we gave an additional description of Katie's Closet and the Community Health Center. The additional descriptions for those spaces were warranted by the MSBA, citing those as questionable for reimbursement. So, and it's not uncommon that the MSBA will not reimburse certain programs, special programs that are unique to each school, but we felt compelled to make a stronger case for those programs. So that's exactly what was done in the ed plan. To clarify some of the space summary refinements, I'm showing here two floor plans, the upper gym and the lower gym areas, and this is just a diagram to explain further why we gave additional clarification of the special education and the ROTC space. You can see on this plan, there are numbers 1 through 6 on the upper level. Those represent 3 gym stations at 3,000 square feet each, totaling 18,000 square feet. That is the maximum the MSBA will allow as a gymnasium. We have co-located adjacent to that the adaptive PE program, which is another 6,000 square feet, and a U-shaped marching space that is the ROTC marching and drills space. So that's why you see overall that allows us to have a track overlay into the gymnasium in these combined spaces. We received preliminary word from the MSBA, in fact, actually a letter that said they do not, at this point, take any issue with us co-locating the space, so I think that's great news. They reserve the right to continue, as with all space summary and program areas, to continue to review it, but they spoke with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to also make sure that that co-location was not of issue, particularly with them, and so that's great news for the city of Lowell. As far as the overall space summary, I know this will not be readable to most unless you have a handout, but what we are finding is that we have really not made any changes to the space summary with the exception of removing the pool. So it remains exactly as voted and approved previously. The MSBA has provided comments, and so far they have accepted all the core academic spaces. That's their first category. They are deferring to the DESE as far as special education space, and that's normal. On the next page of the space summary, they have additionally accepted our art, music, and tech spaces with a couple of exceptions that they have not rejected, but they want to continue to review, and that's the school store and the bank. And again, I would classify those as pretty typical that the MSBA would take a closer look at those. Again, it's not as though we cannot build these spaces, it's just whether they're going to consider it eligible for reimbursement. They're very relatively small spaces within the school. They are also going to continue to look at the TV studio area. Through health and physical education, they've accepted all spaces. That includes the additional gym stations that we were seeking, with the one exception of the athletic director's office has additional bursar and conference space that is, again, maybe very much needed for a school of this size, but it's not what the MSBA typically sees, so they, at this point, are going to continue to review that additional 450 square feet. Again, it's very small space in the size of the whole plan. The media center, they have accepted in full form. The auditorium and drama areas, they have accepted, but they are citing that the proposed auditorium is about 2,000 square feet larger than their cap. I will say that this comment from the MSBA comes at a time when it was all new construction. We are now talking about a renovated existing auditorium that exists at exactly that size. So I imagine that comment will be revisited as well. And to go on, they have accepted everything we've got under the category of dining and food service, as well as medical. Under administration and guidance, as well as custodial and maintenance, they are going to continue to review the spaces that we are showing. On the space summary that you have in your handout, as well as what's up on the screen, you can see off to the right-hand side, there are a number of orange-colored blocks, basically. Those are the MSBA's formulas that don't scale with the size of a building. So we have marked this up for the MSBA. We have been having dialogue with them to point to the fact that for many of these spaces, it might be fine for a school of 1,000, maybe even 2,000, but when you have a school of 3,500 students, these spaces that are in orange should really be scaled up. So I think the MSBA is understanding that. We're certainly continuing the dialogue and conversation. So where they say spaces are under review, it's just a continued conversation. And I think the case is being made for this additional space. That's what I have as far as the update of the educational plan and the space summary.
Any questions from the Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Bell, the last time, I mean, I think it was back last year, we received a communication from the MSBA that questioned some of the size, so some of the space and the way it was dedicated. Is that all squared away now, or is that, and is the school department happy with the way that that's been settled?
I would say it's following the normal course of action with the MSBA. They reserve the right up until the time of the project scope and budget agreement to formally accept or reject. They don't accept everything ultimately until you reach that point, and that's at the end of schematic design.
But we've at least addressed everything that they've questioned in that previous correspondence?
We have.
Okay. And are you in touch with the school department on this, and do you know, how does that go? How is that communication going?
Well, we have the educational leadership team, which had been formed at the outset, the beginning of the project, and continues. So we rely on meeting with the superintendent and representatives from the school, principal, curriculum, department heads, facility managers. This leadership group is very much engaged in, we have a series of meetings to make sure that everything being proposed is pushed along, is articulated, is representing the goals, desires, values of the district.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from task force? Councilor Kennedy talked about the size of the high school, and you've mentioned this, you know, you're negotiating for a high school that's much larger than the typical high school, and the state really doesn't have, we'll say, an outline as to what you should have. How does that dialogue go? I mean, how do you talk to a group and say, well, you've got plans for 600 student high school, you've got plans for 1,200 student high school, possibly plans for 1,500 to maybe 2,000, but not for 3,000. How does that dialogue go that it makes any sense for you to come back to us and say, they're not going to allow that space because of what?
So the way the dialogue goes is through the form of the formal MSBA submissions. They have them coined. We've handed in quite some time ago what's called the PDP, Preliminary Design Program, and that's the first chance where they get to look at the written narrative, the space summary. And I can say from our experience, they categorically go by their own guidelines without having conversations. So, and they will formally say, you don't meet our guidelines, and they'll list out all the spaces, and they would like you to further explain. I can say sometimes it's a little bit frustrating because it's kind of that type of feedback that's a little bit cyclical. Will answer the question about why we have, I've used this example before, a mailroom. Their guidelines say 100 square feet for a mailroom, and again, that might be fine for a 1,000 student high school with that many teachers, or 2,000, but at some point you cannot fit the mailboxes, you cannot fit the teachers in and out to get the mail. So we write initially a response that tries to articulate why it should be larger, and oftentimes the MSBA, I think, a sign of acceptance might be they'll continue to review that. If they take issue with it, they will say, they'll use stronger language. So this dialogue will happen again. Our second submission to the MSBA, which is, had already gone in previously for the Cawley site, and will go in, May 9th, thank you. We'll have some of those same comments repeated. That's where I say sometimes it's frustrating. They'll ask about that mailroom again, and we'll respond, or we'll point to where we've already given an explanation of why it should be larger. And they, again, will most likely reserve the right to continue to review that. They usually don't accept a lot of things along the way. We sometimes have informal conversations if it's a big item like the field house or the pool. We'll have very deliberate conversations to make sure that we can head off a problem late in the process. But I suspect, and based on some of the comments we've heard and continued dialogue with them, they are, their own words, are recognizing that the space template does not scale to a school this size. So I can't say that that says we'll get acceptance of all of these things, but I expect that they certainly are understanding that they don't scale, and they're not here to kind of penalize the the district for having one large school as opposed to 2 or 3 high schools, which a city might have. I think they've already come a long way. They certainly drew a strong line with the pool. They had a number of projects coming up with pools. They have accepted pools in the past, and they drew a sharper line. We can see with the field house, they actually, the conversations were productive, and they saw it's in their own interests as well as the districts to have multi-purpose functionality to better serve the community, to better serve the school. So they've accepted that. And I'm getting the sense that many of these things are on the right track.
Okay, I mean, it's our frustration. I mean, I remember when they talked about when you were asking to increase the gym size and they wanted to separate the gyms and have 2 gyms. I mean, it's hard to understand their thinking, it really is.
That's right, and you were there for that because it was floated to have them on separate floors, which is a management nightmare. Sometimes it just takes the continuing, through these submissions, we have to continue to make the case and have the conversations.
Senator Dunham, on your, the other shoe that you wear, that's probably a problem that has to be addressed at the state level, to have an understanding.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously one of the biggest high schools in the history of a project of the MSBA, so it's certainly outside the norm that probably staff is usually looking at the MSBA, so it's certainly essential to constantly remind them, that this is that huge high school project and not what their typical run-of-the-mill. Mr. Mayor, I had one quick question.
Sure.
And I haven't been here, so I apologize. The spaces that you've just illustrated, do those apply equally just in general to either 2A or 3A?
So, no, that's actually a good question. The program is exactly the same for any option that you will see. And when I say it's exactly the same, that means this is the menu of what we have to build into each plan.
Regardless.
That doesn't mean that the end result of a classroom, for example, that's fit into the 1922 building is going to perfectly hit the stated number. But we work hard to get them as close as possible. That's actually some of the conversations we've had with the MSBA as well, recognizing that there, especially in the vintage of buildings you have here, there can be significant inefficiencies. Wall thicknesses alone can be 4 feet thick because they have gravity vents inside of them, so where normally it would be 8 inches thick. So they're prepared, and we've been having those starter conversations with them.
Okay. I just had one quick question. Out of those questionable spaces that the MSBA still has not agreed will be reimbursable, approximately how many square feet do you think do you have a ballpark as far as what may not be eligible for reimbursement?
I added it up and I wrote it down. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get to.
All right, so if you can
right
get
now.
back to us, that would be helpful. I'm just curious what the total amount, if none of it was accepted, and then
Yeah,
hopefully.
and I don't think that that's likely
That's
the
probably
case.
not going to be the case, but I'm
I
just
think
trying to get an idea.
The big ones are the TV studio at 4,000 square feet.
Right.
Everything else is relatively small,
The store is small.
couple
and
hundred
the
square
bank
feet
is
here and
small.
there. And again, it should be noted that, again, my numbers might be wrong, but I believe there's 7,000 to 8,000 square feet of other space. They've accepted already
Okay,
most of it, with the exception of the Community Health Center, which is 1,500 square feet, and Katie's Closet, which I believe is 700 square feet.
okay,
So they've accepted a fair amount.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Bob, I mean, another example, though, if we didn't have the auditorium that we have now, we would have to build an auditorium that actually could not hold a complete class. That's what's the difficulty. I mean,
And that's common. They typically don't support housing an entire school. Their formulas are
I'm
built
not,
up.
I'm talking about a freshman class, or, I mean, for us, I'm
right.
just talking about a grade level.
Yeah. Typically, that's a great example. Their formulas are built on allowing an auditorium for 2/3 of the enrollment. And then it's capped at a certain 750, I think. So you don't want to get penalized, again, because you have the one school. Why can't you seat 2/3? What we proposed was to seat a modest 1/3 of the enrollment, and that was at a size that matches the existing Irish auditorium, and we thought that was a fair concession. Formally, they rejected it, but we will continue those conversations with them because it's a reasonable case to make 1/3 versus the 2/3 formula that they have.
All right, thank you. We all set? Okay. The next part is to revise it, is the eminent domain update. We have Mr. Valesso here to give us an overview. Is he present? Oh, sorry. Elliot, do you mind?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since this last meeting, the City Council has voted to begin the process to take 75 Arcand Drive via eminent domain. At this point, the Law Department has proceeded to identify those potential parties that would be affected by this process, and we are taking steps at this point to prepare for such a taking. Status remains ongoing on that process. However, we are confident that we can move forward within appropriate scheduling. At this point, in terms of update, we have begun the process. I'm hesitant to sort of describe what specific steps we're taking due to concerns regarding attorney-client privilege and things like that. What I can assure the school board committee, though, is that the Law Department is proceeding as planned on the eminent domain process, and we are moving forward as we speak.
Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, we're looking to have 2 appraisals done. And we're looking at probably a 45-day window from the time that the assignment's accepted and completed. Is that correct? All right, so let's say that were all to happen next week, then we'd be looking about the middle of May when those appraisals would come back. And does that provide us with enough time to keep within the schedule that we've set?
I believe at this point, now granted, things can happen that would affect timetables and schedules like that. I believe based on what we have projected currently, we would be within the schedule as originally outlined.
Okay, and the appraisals that are being done are appraisals on the real estate itself. But within the building is probably a substantial amount of equipment. Granted, it's equipment that's probably greatly depreciated in most cases, but nevertheless is a significant amount, there's a good amount of inventory within the building. Are we gonna need to do an appraisal of that equipment? And, well, how do we proceed, or how do we arrive at a number for that? Or is that something that can be done after the eminent domain taking, or can you just sort of explain that?
What you're describing, Counselor, deals with the relocation process for the tenants. I think I can direct reference to Assistant City Manager McGovern, who can more speak to that.
Mr. Sleep is here. Do you want him to answer those questions now?
Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. My name is Peter Sleeper, and I own a professional relocation and eminent domain company out of Arlington, Mass., and I've been doing this for over 35 years, assisting city, towns, and federal governments who specifically deal in the eminent domain. Unfortunately, you have to do that to, develop public buildings and highways and public transportation, affordable housing, et cetera. In connection with that, once the appraiser is through with his work and they come up with a figure, they have 30 days to give that particular price to the owner for him to accept it or not accept it. So that June 5th date has to take into consideration that 30 days that they have a right to review what you're offering them. And after June 5th, we vote the taking. Then my staff, my daughter, Jennifer, to my right, my other associate, Brian Nicholas. Again, we've been in the business for over 40 or 50 years. We've been given directions from the city to treat them, with sensitivity, compassion. Our intent is to have, all these businesses, all these dentist practices relocated by the end of the year. And you're speaking of equipment. There are 2 statutes, both Chapter 79A and the Uniform Act, that allows for the displaced cities such as Lowell to provide relocation assistance. And it pretty much is what I consider a very comprehensive relocation program that will allow them to set up, be it Lowell, hopefully they'll all want to resettle here in Lowell. In addition to the physical relocation, we go out there as part of our contract and identify comparable space, be it downtown Lowell or any neighborhood within Lowell. And again, you know, we do this every day, so we feel confident with the inventory and the vacancy rate out there that at any given time, there's at least 14,000 square feet. I guess that's the interior of the space at 75 Arcan Drive. There's probably hundreds of thousands of square feet of office space, maybe not necessarily medical, but within those relocation payments that they're eligible for, we can convert an office space into a working dental practice. Hypothetically, takes a lot of work in between. You'd like to close down on a Friday night, and then they send out notices to all their patients and their vendors that we're opening up on a particular new location Monday morning. And there's no reason why that shouldn't happen. I have the faith, if I didn't have the faith of the city, I've worked for the city before in other eminent domain projects, particularly the school, the middle school down on Broadway, which there were a lot of takings back. Was that in the 1990s or 2000?
It was a while ago.
A while ago. You know, we anticipate both having them relocated and, getting back to the city says, Pete, whatever we have to do to follow the laws. So they're not met by anybody, a council member, a year from now, and they say, how'd you make out with this relocation? And we're hoping to say, you know, not for nothing, it was a little rocky at the beginning, but we're up and running. We've been here for 6 months. We haven't lost any patients. And that's the goal of any relocation program, especially displacements. I consider this the most difficult. The designers will probably tell you differently, that they got the most difficult. The contractors say, I got the most difficult. But until you have a clear piece of land, you really can't do anything. You can't develop. So we're going to meet with the 6 individual dentist practices, I'm hoping within a week or two, and that'll be a dialogue month after, week, and then we'll do the inventory, as you mentioned, and that'll give us an idea how much each practice will receive in relocation benefits. And we get a couple of estimates, and Brian's a specialist, and I'll perhaps give my estimates to Mike or Ed or someone within the city. I'll say, okay, this is what dentist A is going to receive. And there's appeals. If they don't accept the figure that we come up with, they can go to the city, and the city will look at both sides, and they'll say, okay, you deserve another $10,000. And if they agree to that, they can go to the DHCD. There's a Bureau of Relocation. That's a very important department within the state, and they always are monitoring my work. So they don't want a call from Dentist A saying, listen, they hired this guy Sleeper. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not experienced. Hopefully it won't happen, and I'm not going to say things are going to run smoothly, because when you're displacing anybody, whether it be a family, an individual, a business, they've been there for a long time, and they think, and they should think, that's the only place that they can continue. And we gently explain the eminent domain process to them hundreds of times, that the city has the right to do this. They had the vote, and but we're here to help, and Mike is going to be watching me, and everybody else from the city is going to be watching me to make sure that you don't receive a call, none of the members receive a call, that they're not being treated fairly. Not to say we're going to have a difference if somebody wants 100,000 and I come up with 80,000, and I'll say, listen, I can't waste the taxpayers' money. It is what it is, but if I miss something, then I'm certainly open-minded. But we have a good track record, and I have hundreds of businesses that I'll let them call, and they were in the same position 3 years ago with that first initial, could be the city of Somerville with all their takings in Cambridge for the new Green Line. Oh, it's never going to work, and we're going to be put out of business. And right now, everybody's been relocated to a place that's even better because we move them there and we help pay for relocation. So I never think anything's going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge, but I think we're up for the challenge. And, anybody's guidance, we're always looking for people's guidance. And if anybody has any questions.
Well, I do.
Yep.
So what I really would like to know is, in order for, I think the city council is expecting or anticipating that there'll be a vote on the eminent domain in early June.
Okay.
So the relocation component, of which the appraisal of the equipment would be part of, I guess, does that does not have to be completed before the city takes ownership of the property, is that correct?
Yes, no, that has to be completed before, but that'll give me enough time. I'll have enough time. You can't displace people. You can acquire the property on June 5th, but you can't displace them because automatically after the date of the taking, they have 120 days to remain. So we can, again, I've perhaps delivered 50 or 60 relocation plans to DHCD throughout the Commonwealth, and not one has been rejected. I mean, there's 10 items that we have to address to protect the business.
Okay, so let's say that next week, we engage 2 appraisers.
Right.
That go out and they want to
For
take.
the real estate,
For real estate.
Yep.
And they want to take 45 days. So let's say that's the middle of May.
right?
And then you mentioned that there was a 30-day, period.
For the owners, yes, for once the just compensation, once they arrive.
So then that would put us to the middle of June.
If I'm not mistaken, if the appraisers don't come back with the figure that the review appraiser accepts and that the city accepts, then you send them the letter, the just compensation, that everybody agreed to this, and this is what the fair market value is, 75 Arcan Street is. So unless that is not delivered by May 5th, because they have the 30 days, June 5th might be in a little jeopardy. So it behooves everybody to get on that appraiser. I happen to know the real estate appraiser involved. We work together a lot, because the personal property and sometimes the real estate, they come in a little conflict. What's real estate? What's a piece of equipment? But we work well, and I know he's a good appraiser, and he'll do it as expeditiously as he can. So I just want you to, very good question. I don't want to be responsible, but that 30 days, they have to review that. So whenever that letter goes out, they have 30 days to say, okay, I think it's fair, or no, I want more money.
Okay, so we're tight on the
Yes.
schedule for the appraisers.
Right.
So the rest of it, the relocation component, after the city takes ownership of the property, the tenants can stay there for 4 months or longer, right?
Yes, yeah, if you don't need the building,
Exactly.
if you don't need the building.
So the appraisal of the equipment and everything else that needs to be done, the relocation, that can all take place after the 5th of June?
Oh, yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that
Okay.
takes place after, and I don't anticipate, for this relocation plan, that I'll probably have a draft to the city by the middle of April, 3rd week in April, and ready to go. If they don't have many questions or concerns, I should have that done by the end of April, a final one to be presented to DHCD. Now, at the same time I present it to DHCD and the city, all the tenants get a 21-day review for them to look at it. And a lot of the information in that relocation plan has come from the dentists themselves. How much square feet, how much rent can they afford in place A? So they won't be foreign to this plan. They'll say, that's right, Peter asked me this question, we responded accordingly. Again, in all the plans I've done, very seldom do they come back and say, oh no, Peter missed the boat on this, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So 21 days after May 30th is, April. That'll be in the May 21st, where DHC will give us the approval for the relocation. They're pretty good in the turnaround.
Okay.
So I hope to I'm pretty sure we'll have the relocation plan approved before the order of taking.
Okay.
I plan on that.
All right, thank you. So if we're real tight on this schedule, I mean, that's more than, that's over 6 weeks to do the 2 appraisals. That's a long time, I think. And I think what we need to do is try to get them to kind of tighten it up to maybe 5 weeks. I think 5 weeks, even 4 weeks is I think 4 weeks is more the norm, but I think 5 weeks is generous enough.
We have one appraiser on contract they've already submitted. He could do it between 30 and 45 days. The other proposals I'm waiting for is Monday.
Right, but I think,
We'll work on the 30 days angle. We hear you.
Yeah, so maybe we can do that, try to,
Absolutely.
okay. Because that's gonna be important, because if we can't do that, then if we're looking to go to the MSBA in June, we won't have ownership of the property, which isn't totally critical, but, it would be nice if we could be in that situation by that meeting. I mean, I think that's what the plan was, right? That we would have ownership of the property by early June in order that we would be able to say that we had ownership of the property when we go before the full MSBA board in June, right?
Yes, Counsel, that's absolutely correct. When we first began this process about a month or so ago, we picked that June 5th deadline. We knew it was aggressive and it was going to be tight, but we picked that date basically because then we knew that we had June 12th, June 19th, and June 26th, 3 more weeks of council meetings prior to the June 27th MSBA board meeting. And we knew that the city council wanted to have this in place before they went down to the MSBA. Even though the submission will be going down on May 9th to the MSBA, we knew that the council wanted to have this wrapped up before the formal meeting.
Okay. Can we firm that up early next week and then get a communication to the council and the school committee on that and how that's gonna go?
I should know before council on Tuesday, you should be able to have that information.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any questions?
Just a question, when you talk about relocation, are you talking in any way replication of what they have, or is
Pretty
it?
much, pretty much. We want to set them up. If they have 3 operatories, we'll set them up. So pretty much when they open up their new location, it's the same practice. If they want to open up a 4th or a 5th operating room, that's on their dime.
Okay.
For instance, if they have 10 chairs and 10 sinks and 10 x-ray machines, that's all the law will allow, because that's all they have. If they want to do more, they'll have to pay it. However, I try to instruct them that, you know, if they want to go from 3,000 square feet, probably that's the average over there.
Yeah.
And if they want to, you know, build out a 7,000 square foot, you know, it's time, it's a time sensitive, and that's going to take a lot longer than the 3,000 square foot. So not that you can't prevent them. I mean, if they want to go to triple air space, I just tell them about the, you know, the 120 days, and it might be a month or 2 after that, but we don't have a year. Some agencies, for some reason, they knew well before, and they could sit on a piece of property for 12 months without the tenants being displaced. So this is all the education I'll tell them. But yes, we definitely want them to survive and to be happy somewhere else. And that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? Mr. Vaughn, do you have, sorry. Superintendent Kapawi? Yeah. Oh, Senator.
No, I just had a question regarding the appraisals. I was involved with several of these takings back in the day, the Stocklessa School, the early garage, the Hamilton Canal. These are very technical proceedings. And timing is critically important, but also process. So I want to make sure we're following the right process. And I just hadn't seen these appraisals. I haven't seen those sent out, so maybe we can be provided the information into the process and the timing, because the appraisal has to be done before you can do your.
Oh, no, we can do it.
You'll do
I'm
it
sorry.
simultaneously, but we still have to have that.
Oh, definitely, and I worked with this appraiser in many instances before, so that'll take the time away. He'll go in, he'll do his appraisal for the real estate. At the same time, we'll do ours for the equipment. I call him up, he'll call me up, and so I'd rather have Rick than someone I didn't know, because I just know he knows what he has to do. It's just that 30 days that we want to try to.
So, and I know Attorney Veloso mentioned attorney-client privilege, which I respect, but maybe we can follow up afterward and get some information on that.
Just in general, we sent out 35 different quotes to all known appraisals that were registered in the area. To date, we've received 1 back, and
Okay.
the other ones are saying they'll have it to us by
But you didn't
Monday.
do a bid
We did quotes, because it's
quotes?
under the value.
It's under what?
It's under, they're not exceeding the 30B requirement to have a sealed bid.
We'll just, it's just, we want to make sure we proceed very, very carefully every step
Agreed.
of the way.
All right, we had
Thank you.
3 stages, but at this point, are there any other questions regarding this issue? Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, if I could, it sounds like we made RFPs or quotes out to a number of appraisers. We have several in the process, is that true? Did you say we have 3 on tap right now?
The ones that have responded to date have alluded that they would give us quotes on Monday, but until I actually have them on hand, I'm just waiting to say. I've received many saying thank you, but we're so busy at this time, and good luck.
So you think that we have 3 coming in, but you don't know for sure?
Correct. Won't know until I have it in hand.
I guess I'm wondering if it would make sense for us to re-energize our search. Is there anything else that we need to do?
I have went to all known appraisers that have worked in the city before. I've gone to the websites of the appraisals in Massachusetts and sent literally a quote to every appraisal firm that there was. But I'm open.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, if I could, if you sent out that many, and I realize that you went with that method because that was supposed to streamline this process.
Correct.
But there's probably some people who you've heard back from that have declined, but there must be several people on that list that you haven't heard from at all, I would assume.
Correct.
So it might be worthwhile to, just to follow up with them and see if they are interested in bidding, just so that we know. There might be some, it could be that they're busy enough that they just sort of put it aside, but if they received a call, then maybe that would rekindle or ignite their interest.
Will do. We have done that to some already, surprised that they didn't participate, but we'll continue, and we are continuing trying to get participation.
Okay, thank you.
Senator?
Now, obviously, if you're not getting, you need
Yeah.
bid, you need to have these appraisers on board, so you may have to do more, you may have to bid it. We obviously have to, and that would be a time issue, so.
Correct.
Councilor Kennedy?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bell, I know that we're trying to have the appraisals done for June 5th in order that, so we'll be prepared for the MSBA meeting, but I also understand that it's not critical, and it's likely that we'll be able to, or is it likely that we would get a favorable vote from the MSBA in June if we didn't have possession of the property? I mean, I think that what you've indicated in the past is that the importance of having ownership of the property is in order that soil testings can be done. But how important is that to the MSBA?
I'll defer to our project management team. Joe Drown is our principal in charge, and Alicia Caratano is one of our project managers.
Counselor, MSBA typically does not require you to have ownership of the property at the time of our meeting that we'll be having with them in June at the board meeting. They do require you to have it for your schematic design when you're completing your agreement with them. We were hoping that in the summertime, it would make sense to, if we had access to that land, to provide that space for borings, because we haven't done that yet.
Right.
And that would be an advantage to that.
Okay, but I guess if it isn't done by early June, then it would be likely done by the end of June, which would still give you the summer. So rather than to just put them on the same track, if they run on separate tracks, you'd still be able to do those testings, and so we'd still be able to proceed on schedule, right, or on the schedule that we're hoping for?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. Just real quick to you, Mr. Vaughn. So Chapter 30B allows us under a certain threshold to go out for a solicitation, not a formal bid, because it's timely and it's costly, and this is the way we should be doing it. Are there any other, have you looked at combis, the state bid list? to see if, put the solicitation out on that? There's
I
usually
did-
schedules.
I didn't see any. I've
Oh, you
gone
didn't?
to all
Okay.
the appraisal association websites and then all the names that were listed there.
Right.
To everybody's point, if come Tuesday we don't have any, I could certainly then put in the goods and services. It would publish the following Monday.
Right.
And the requirement would be then it would need 2 weeks before it could be due.
Right.
When we do it in the combis and we put it in the Lowell Sun and the city website, it also goes in the combis, which is the state, so it does
Right.
get a broader participation, but that's a 3-week process.
No, I think by virtue of sending out 35 in the method that you did, that's the way we're trying to identify. So we get one in, it's okay. I mean, we'd like more, because that's the way you get the best bid, but considering how busy it is out there, if you've heard back from some,
I do anticipate I'll have
Right.
some because they've told me they would, but been doing this a long time, so until I actually have it.
gotcha. Thank you very much.
You all set, Councilor? Councilor Kennedy, you all set? Councilor Kennedy, you all set? Senators, are you all set? Also, Councilor Leahy just came into the room, and former City Councilor Corey Belanger is here also. All right, I think we've covered that area. The next area is the review options of the phasing in the added renovations. Mr. Barbell, please.
Yes, joining me from Perkins Eastman is also our project architect, Don Guariello, and our landscape architect, Ashley Iannocelli from Traverse. What we'd like to do is walk everyone through. These plans are not dramatically different than what you've seen before, but they have been updated so that they reflect the refined educational program. So you might say that's pretty simple. It just removes the pool. But of course, when we take out the pool from the program, we have to shuffle spaces. It results in effectively a little bit less in additions, which interestingly can sometimes prove to be a challenge with phasing, because if there's less new construction, there's less kind of swing space to put students into. But bottom line is, we've been able to update the plans. They're pretty much as you've seen them. We think they got a little bit better. The phasing, I'll go through as well, is pretty much the same as what you've seen before. It's worth noting that we are at feasibility study level, so the designs are dependent on a lot of additional information to come in the future. They're really just concepts. What we're looking at right now is the first of 3 options. It's the add reno option 2A, so it's formerly option 2 that's been revised. It, of course, is fitted onto the existing site. This option shows a new gymnasium building and a new freshman academy, renovations to the 1980s and the 1922 building, as well as some small additions. It has the benefit in meeting one of the prime educational objectives to consolidate the freshmen onto the single campus site. The cons on this option are, the primary ones are that a temporary gymnasium is required because we're building on top of or in place of the existing. Some of the windowless lab spaces that exist in the 1980s building would remain. They would be renovated, but they would not receive daylight. And the end result of this plan has limited green space and limited loading dock service area. We estimate that it would be about 4 years plus a summer in construction. Another thing I'd like to point out on the site plan here is that you can see the building is right up to the property limits. The Freshman Academy is kind of right up to the sidewalk. The new entry to the school doesn't afford a lot of plaza outdoor space, so it's not formally listed as a con, but there may be some concerns that there isn't really enough breathing room for all the students as they exit the school or arrive at the school. Let's see, if we were to go through how we would build this, it starts with phase 1, where a temporary gymnasium would be installed on the grassland, city-owned land, adjacent to the parking garage. You can see that in blue. This, I believe, we have as a summer start. In that summer, we would also have the demolition of the existing field house. And within the existing 1980s and 1922 and the existing freshman academy, we would also try to free up rooms inside the building. We've done a preliminary study with the educational leadership team, and we found that through, conceptually through tighter scheduling for more utilization of rooms, as well as moving away from dedicated computer labs and having more computers available within classrooms, and a few other things, we can free up 40 rooms within the existing school building. So that's part of the swing space that we need to be able to move students around and create new construction. Next slide shows phase 2. With the existing gymnasium building removed, we're able to build the new gymnasium building as well as the new freshman academy. Again, students would use spaces freed up within the existing buildings. They would also use the temporary gymnasium across the street. That's a challenge because it's across the street, of course. While we're doing new construction, we will also be renovating the, if you will, west side of the 1980s building. So you can see an orange stripe along that 1980s building. The idea there is that with construction occurring right outside, we would not want students in those classrooms. So we would have those classrooms available for renovation. There's a corridor that runs along that length, and that creates the separation between contractor and occupied or educational spaces. There's a lot more detail that would need to go into this, but we never want to have construction occurring right on the opposite side of a classroom wall, for example. So we're creating some buffer space. And that's true throughout each phase. So in our next phase, phase 3, we would continue to renovate the rest of the 1980s building. At the south or bottom portion of the 1980s building, you can see a slightly different color. That is renovation work that would occur in the summers, all 3 floors, so it would not occur while students are in the building. And by making sure that that doesn't happen while school is occurring, that allows contiguous connection between the new spaces we've built, the new freshman academy and the new gymnasium, all the way across to the 1922 building. So here you can see the red areas show where we'll be renovating parts of the existing building, 1980s, rebuilding a bridge, connecting them, and renovating about half of the 1922 building. Again, all the spaces separated by a corridor between the contractor and student areas. The last, phase 4, would include the remainder of the 1922 building and the second bridge, which would be reconstructed. And the end result is the new school facility consolidated on campus, 4 years plus a summer. I will say that just as the building plans are very conceptual in nature, the phasing concept is also just a very preliminary test of keeping track of how many rooms we can free up and how many the contractor can take. So all of this would need to be vetted in a lot more detail. Usually the construction manager, who would be hired just after schematic design, would have an active role, and really it would be their responsibility to determine the program, the overall phasing. What we're doing is trying to create a concept of how it can be done. What I could do is go through all of the options rather than questions on each one, but I'm happy if there are immediate questions to answer any. So if we take a look deeper into the school, Dawn will share with us some of the updates, somewhat modest updates that we have got on the plan.
Thank you, Bob. For those that have been, excuse me, along for the process, this may look somewhat familiar to you. There are not a lot of changes on the 2A as it relates to the removal of the swimming pool. That was about 8,000 square feet, and in doing so, it was previously stacked below the large gymnasium. What we did was shuffled some spaces on the south side of the 1980s building to get more mechanical and custodial into that lower level where the locker rooms are below the gymnasium. That allowed us to do a little less addition on the south side of the 1980s building. So as you're looking at the plans, I know it looks like an ant could walk through them on the right, and I apologize for that, but it's mostly to grossly show where the major spaces are. The entry is still in the current location, just closer to Father Morissette Boulevard, as Bob mentioned. The new freshman academy that gets built for swing space while they still occupy the freshman academy down the street. That has some maker spaces and engineering and CAD labs on the lower floor, more spaces that are sort of open to all the students in the school. And above it stacks nicely the freshman academy so they can work in collaboratively amongst themselves in classrooms and science labs. The 1980s, I'm sorry, before I move too far, that large yellow space in the middle is what we're deeming sort of the heart of the school. That's the major cafeteria. We have the kitchen in its current location. It directly connects now versus what is currently exists in the school. And really that becomes the vibrant center of the school as you enter the building. And that holds true in 3A as well, you'll see that. But the yellow spaces are all public, so we've got gymnasium, cafeteria, you can see the auditorium in the 1922 building. All the blue spaces are classrooms. The light green is science, the darker green are sort of unique spaces, ROTC, culinary, maker spaces. So those are the major changes from the previous option 2.
Yes. Correct, yeah.
Yep.
We're, with these diagrams, we're not really at the level of walls, they're really spaces. So you won't see that detail until we get into the next level.
But it's worth noting, some stairs will be removed and replicated because they're not in an ideal location, or maybe they're not appropriately connecting spaces. Some of those will be rebuilt, and then the exit stairs will, most of them will exist as they are. We're relocating one closer to the new bridge. So it's nice to have that connection to come across the bridge and then go up or down. So just to clarify, because there's quite a bit in that center space that will go away.
So I'm just thinking the way that's configured, there'd probably be a fair number of columns.
There will, yes, and potentially walls. Yep. Once we get a scan of the building and get in there and start really getting into the existing conditions, we'll have a much better idea about what will stay and what will go. It might be nice to have some of it, sort of artifacts of the old spaces that are there, and then, have it updated to perform for the current educational model. You're welcome.
So moving on to the next concept, it's option 3A. And this one is, again, very similar to what we had as option 3 previously. Not a lot has changed, except, again, the pool has been removed and there's a little bit less new construction on this plan. We know that this also consolidates the campus, bringing the freshman academy onto the main site. In this option, just as we had shown previously, we're able to actually bring light wells into the center of the the 1980s building, and that provides daylight into those windowless classrooms. So that's a key component of this plan. So there's no windowless classrooms, no windowless labs. We also have the benefit of green space on site for the use of ROTC band, gymnasium, PE classes. What has changed a little bit on this site is, it's hard to describe, the pointer won't work on the screen, but we have a little bit more plaza space now on the canal side. If you can see on the south end of the building, where previously we had a little bit more new construction required, that's gone away. And what that means when we get into the plans is that the cafeteria and other spaces now will have a better connection or views to the canal. That heart of the school will be even more vibrant, and there'll be opportunities to connect to outdoor learning in a controlled way. So this plan does locate the gym on the new site, which of course requires eminent domain and moves the building a little bit further away from some of the other parts of the school. We estimate the phasing in this case to be 5 years, and that's changed by 3 months from the last time we showed it. And primarily the reason 3 months were added was because of the start time. With all construction phases, we're trying to hit major transition points like summer, where the contractor can kind of move around, change the fencing, and it's not disruptive to education. So these options pretty much all start in the summer, and that changed the durations of some of the construction phasing. So it's estimated at 5 years, and I'll take you through it. Similar but different to the last one. In this case, the demolition of 75 Arcand could occur without disrupting, if you will, the school, as well as the new construction for a brand-new gymnasium building. So all of this can occur while the students are just using the school's buildings as they do now. This is effectively off-site. No temporary gymnasium is required. No temporary classrooms are required. In the second phase, just as previously, we now build the freshman academy where the existing gymnasium used to be. We've built a new gymnasium so the students can start to use this new space immediately, and that's why we can take down the existing gymnasium. Just as I had shown last time, we're building the new freshman academy, but we're also renovating a little bit of the 1980 building at the same time. And there's some summer work shown in the south portion of the 1980 building. The next phase would continue just as you've seen before, where we would complete the renovations of the 1980 building as well as a good portion of the 1922. We would rebuild the bridge. Last phase, just as before, we would complete the renovations in the 1922 building. And the end result is one large campus with a lot more outdoor green space as well as plaza space. You can see the entry plaza for the school, even the new freshman academy, they're not right up on the street. There's some room out there, so that gives a lot of ample space for students to gather or when they depart the school to safely exit. And we, again, estimate 5 years overall duration, but it should be noted that only 4 are on the actual school property. So that first year is effectively off-site.
I was just pausing in case anyone had a question. As it relates to the plan in 3A, similar to 2A and how you enter, like Bob mentioned, it's a little setback from Father Morissette. The freshman academy is in the same location. The gymnasium is farther away. We have a little more heart of the school space to work with, being that the cutout, it wraps around, so there'll be natural light that gets drawn in from above. There's a connection. I'll get up and show it because it's worth noting. This is different. This corner can be glass and you connect to the canal where we didn't previously have that, and then connect on this side to the green space. So, you know, getting natural light and outdoor connection in those public spaces will really make them more vibrant, and hopefully the students will, you know, use them after hours in times other than just eating lunch. Again, in this case, we're hopeful that we can do some receiving off of the new addition near the gymnasium, and that would allow us to have a plaza. Would you go back for a second, Bob? Again, we're taking that nub off. I don't know how else to describe it. It's that piece that says Lowell High School as you come down and behind cobblestones. But the hope is to rebuild that with something that's really, it's an opportunity to sort of be an iconic piece of the school. As it exists, it creates a funny space because we don't actually need the square footage. If you can imagine that it would, I'm sorry if I'm standing right in front of you, it would create this sort of awkward space between a new connection to the gym and this piece. So what we've done is, as far as square footage, we've taken that off, put receiving here, and then replaced it with square footage above, which we hope will create a nicer space back there that's not filled with dumpsters and receiving as it currently exists. So that corner has become a place of improvement, if you will. Would you go back to the plan, Bob? Thank you. So the kitchen is in that new construction, and again, directly adjacent, which we feel is a nice change from what's currently existing. And then above it, we've got the media center and the TV studio, which makes a nice connection in that lobby. There'll be a 2-story opening. You can see up to it, and as it connects back to the gymnasium. And above that, it's hard to read the plans, but as I currently mentioned, it's worth noting the yellow are the public spaces, and the blue is all academic, and the red is administration. And not a lot of that has changed from the previous 3 version. Most of the changes have happened either in the freshman academy or in the new edition as it relates to taking the pool out. We feel like these are all improvements to the plan, and that will continue to happen as we go through schematic design as well.
So the last option we're looking at is an all-new facility on the existing 1980s side of the campus, as well as the expanded site. So it spreads onto 75 Arcand. And this is a 5-story school plus a basement level, so 6 students as far as the 6 floors as far as the student travel is concerned. You can see that overall the building really consumes virtually all of the footprint. There's not really much left over outside for green space or for plaza space. We really took a sincere look at this in trying to make sure that we could make it the most feasible it could possibly be. If you can imagine, this new construction is being built right where the 1980s building as well as the gymnasium exist. That's an awful lot of classrooms to take offline and try to find a home for the students. So we did the best we could, and I'll walk you through what that is. We're suggesting that the construction may start again on the 75 Arcand property with a new freshman wing. This would require a temporary connection back to the 1922 side of the site, and I'll show you why in the next phase, because the new construction needs to occur and take down those existing bridges. So when we start off with the freshman academy, we're creating in the neighborhood of 54 classrooms in that particular plan. We know that we've freed up a certain number inside the existing buildings. That's not enough. So you can see off to the left-hand side, I'm showing in blue, we also would need 24 additional modular classrooms that would need to be located elsewhere. They won't fit on the site. We'll show you available land we've been looking at in the area. They certainly don't fit in the immediate area, so that presents some major challenges, if not, dysfunction in trying to run the school. We also have, in this case, the temporary gymnasium that we've seen in the previous option 2A. So once this new construction occurs, one of the things that we also have to do, it's kind of interesting, we've taken the cafeteria offline. So part of the freshman academy that we're creating will not be completely built. It'll be reserved as a temporary cafeteria space as well. So the last phase would be going back inside of that newly built freshman academy and converting what was a temporary caf back into the classrooms that are intended to be there in the final plan. It's a little bit complicated, but this is probably the best that we could come up with. It tracks and shows what would be left over, what wouldn't fit on the site. And at this point, the students would then move into the completed new 5-story school plus a basement. It would take, we believe, 4 years plus a summer. Again, that's something that we certainly would need to work with the construction manager to see how quickly they could construct that consolidated facility.
Kennedy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of questions. This meeting is a little bit different because, well, we've got several new members, for one thing. It's also being held in the evening and it's being televised. So I know that most members of this committee have heard about the modulars, but we kind of skipped over that this evening. So for people that might be listening at home, can you just review which one of these options would require, which of these options would require modulars and which would not? And the amount of modulars that would be required for each one.
Right. So option 2A, which is on the existing site, would require a modular gymnasium as well as some locker room and team room space. And so that we can show could fit across the street in the grassy area adjacent to the garage. The option 3A, which is the expanded site, takes 75 Arcan, requires 0 modulars of any kind. And the last option here requires the most modulars. It requires 24 classrooms as well as gymnasium, locker room, and team room space.
It's also worth noting that the modulars are not reimbursable by the MSBA. For those who aren't familiar with the process,
Okay.
they are ineligible for reimbursement. So that cost is 100% borne by the city.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, at the last time we went with the MSBA, you'll recall that when there was a discussion about the swimming pool, that Jack McCarthy suggested that maybe the Freshman Academy building would be suitable for a swimming pool. And so it occurred to me, not as part of this project, but maybe down the road, the city might at some point consider a municipal pool that the high school could use, but that everybody could use. Do you think that that building, as it is now, would be conducive to a swimming pool, or are there too many columns and supports that it doesn't make sense?
You know, actually, that would require a bit of study. We have certainly not looked at it at that level of detail and for that specific purpose, so it would take a great deal more people than myself, even many of our engineers would have to put a
Okay.
fair lens on that.
I wasn't really expecting, well, I was hoping to get an answer, but I just thought it was worthwhile asking the question, but certainly it's, you know, I don't think the swimming pool is gonna be part of this project at all, and so that's something that we could probably address down the road. I just thought it was worthwhile asking.
One
Sorry,
thing,
it's worth asking, and I don't think Bob
Yeah.
mentioned it. We show potential pool locations for the sake of the size. That square on the upper left is the 8,000 square foot pool that we extracted. And for the sake of just showing it on that site, there are sort of 2 triangular spaces that would be mechanical spaces, locker rooms, et cetera. We estimated it would be in the range of 10 to 12,000. So we're showing about 12,000 square feet of a space for a pool with associated locker rooms and mechanical space. So, but as it relates to that Freshman Academy building, that's, like Bob mentioned, a greater study.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? A question regarding a temporary gym. How would you describe, what's a temporary gym look like? And how does it survive in the winter months?
sure, beg a little bit of input from our OPM as well. Skanska has some direct experience with doing this, but there are structures that may sound interesting, but inflatable roof structures that are built in New England. There's actually some in the city, downtown Boston, that are what's envisioned. So it would be a structure that could go up relatively quick. It still would have a number of, I guess, built facilities, locker rooms requiring plumbing and a number of things that would probably complicate the construction. But the idea would be, it would be something that could go up quick, be a large, really shell of a space, would have a gymnasium floor. I don't know if there's anything more you can add to that, Mary Ann?
Other than that, they require you to buy it. It's not something you can rent and then give back. It's something that you would have to purchase and then figure out what to do with it afterwards.
It's not reimbursable?
Correct.
Okay. Senator Dunham?
I just had a couple of quick questions. In my view, the least desirable, the last site that you just talked about, but you mentioned the 24 modulars. You said there would be a place that you'd suggest putting them? Did I hear that right?
Well, we haven't found that. We've got, from the city has provided us, actually it's part of what we're going to go into next.
Okay.
So not only for the sake of, if there were modulars, where can they go? Where would they be able to go? But also for any construction project, particularly in an urban setting, there's a need to find additional space for laydown of materials, for whether it's even parking, a number of things. So we've asked the city, the OPM has worked with the city to identify, I think we've got 9 different sites here that represent 14 different parcels that may be of use or available. You can see there are not very many of them very close to the school within walking distance. We've only started to take a look at a few of them, and the closest one, which is, let me see, just outside the door here, on Martin Luther King Jr. Way, has enough size for maybe half of the modular classrooms, does not have enough room for all of them. It's basically a parking lot located behind the post office. That is the closest one. There's also one further up the street, but we haven't identified what the actual parcel bounds are.
Okay, all right. Not that I'm supportive of it, I was just curious where they would actually wind up. I just had one other question, and it actually went to the 3A project in the design, and maybe this is premature, but I'm just curious, one of the concerns today in terms of school security indoors and in safety, especially in the climate, unfortunately, that we live. So I don't know that this plan addresses that? Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're getting there.
Thank you.
Yes.
But it will.
It
You
will.
do expect to address.
Have that meeting, is it next week?
We have it on the 4th.
The 4th.
Coming up. That's one of the meetings we're having next week.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Okay, the next phase, are we all set? Well, okay. The next phase is community outreach. Ms. McGovern?
Yeah.
So right now, we're looking at 4/12 for a community meeting. It will be very similar to the meeting, the couple meetings that we had over at the senior center last year and around the same time. I am meeting with representatives from the Coalition for a Better Acre, the CMAA, and representatives of the city as well to begin to put that together. For those of you who attended, you'll remember that we did it in a breakout style community meeting where we had tables set up at the senior center. We had the presentation by Skansker and Perkins Eastman, and then we gave a certain amount of time for the tables, the people at the tables, to have discussions amongst themselves, come up with questions, and then come back and ask Perkins Eastman the questions that they've developed. So that's the first one that we're looking at. We are also looking to have a community meeting again towards the end of the month when the cost estimations come out, which we're looking at sometime late April.
26th, we'll have it reconciled, yep.
So, and there's also, so we're looking to have, once again, another community meeting at the end of the month, and then there's also going to be an SBC meeting that's going to be required, and possibly a presentation to the city council. If you remember back in June of last year, right before the PSR vote, there was a presentation, I believe, on a Thursday night, and then the council came back in on that that following Tuesday and voted for the preferred site. But Mayor Samaras can talk about that with some dates on and what the committee would like to do moving forward here with those meetings at the end.
We could take the vote on May 1st, because we have to, turn our reports in, they're gonna turn everything in on May 9th. We have April 30th, the Monday before the meeting. We could have a morning meeting or an evening meeting like this. Is any suggestions, Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could, my suggestion would be that we meet on that Monday, which would be April 30th.
Correct.
That this committee meet at that time and recommend a preferred option to the city council for the following evening. And so I would make that in the form of a motion.
Okay. Second, thank you. We also need another community meeting, correct? Now, we'll have the reporting by the 26th. Do we have to have a community meeting? Yeah. Could we have one on the 27th? Yes.
Are we good on that motion?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, so could I just ask as well, the April 12th meeting, through you to Mr. McGovern, the April 12th meeting is going to be at the senior center. Is that what you said?
No, so unfortunately, the senior center is already booked. We reached out to the school department, and we've booked the cafeteria over at Lowell High School. The Irish Auditorium was also booked as well. And it probably work out better because of the seating with the tables and everything if we end up going down that same road of the question and answer.
And so what about the venue for the April 26th meeting?
We haven't, and that's what we wanted to talk about tonight, of the date that the group was thinking about. Like we said, that we know that we have the estimations coming out around the 26th, so we were looking for some guidance and direction from the building committee as to when they wanted to have another community meeting.
But we could have it at the same, if we book the cafeteria, we'd be able to have it at the high school cafeteria as well?
I would find a location, absolutely, whether it's going back to the senior center or the Irish Auditorium or the CAF.
And what would be the prospects for having it be televised locally, both those meetings? Would the LTC be able to do that, or at those locations?
We can talk to them about doing the remote. The 12th is probably going to be difficult for the short turnaround. It is a challenge for the LTC to go to a remote site, but for the later meeting, we can talk to them about maybe doing something live, but at the very least on the 12th, we can talk to them about them recording it and replaying it.
Okay, thanks.
So basically, your suggestions for the same night to do for the community and this group?
You mean to have the second meeting, the meeting that would be on the 26th, to have it be on the 30th?
Yes.
So we do the thing, that sounds good to me. It saves the night for everybody.
And we'd all have the information at the same time. I think that would, yeah. Okay.
I'd make a motion that we do that then, that we have that second meeting on the 30th.
And seconded by Mr. Mason, thank you. Motion passes. I think we've covered the dates. Do we have anything else on the schedule?
I think just very briefly, the other things that the team will be doing in the interim is we have a package that's going to the estimator on Monday. They'll be looking at that for 2 weeks, and then we have a week of what we call reconciliation, where Scansa's estimator and ours go together, and then we're really ready for the meetings, which we just talked about here. So we have a nice brief window, and then we're all headed towards submitting to the MSBA on the 9th of May, and then shortly after that, we'll have a facilities assessment subcommittee meeting, likely the 6th of June, headed towards the MSBA board vote on the 27th of June, and hopefully rolling right into schematic design the beginning of July.
Any questions from the school building committee? We have an audience here. I mean, are there any questions from Councilor Leahy? Yes.
Thank you. So, as a person being on the council and voting for this, when you went over, let me just start with like option two that you presented. Do you feel that that's a safe design? I mean, how are you going to get 3,000 kids in and out of the garage? 2,500 kids, or when the buses pull up for events. Does that seem, is there enough room for safety?
So we'd have to continue to study it. I think we can definitely manage the school so that students can get into the lobby. As I had pointed out, we have concerns that there's not a lot of plaza space outside, and that's okay if they have a place to go coming into the building or into the green space. That would take a bit more conversations. I think we're concerned with how tight it is to the roadways.
Right, because this is part of my frustration. Former headmaster, do you feel that that's a good plan? Like, why are we working on this plan if it's not a good plan? So let me just add that. And then the other thing that we're worried about is, if we're going to be able to afford this, right? So when we get to option 3, was there any discussion on renovating the gym and building just a new building over where the dentist's office are? Like, that should be an option, because we're going to go through all this process. We're going to get right down to the end of the road, and then can we afford it? I mean, so we should almost have an option where, it would be this much to renovate the gym, keep the pool, get rid of the pool, put a new roof on, and build a nice academic building across the way. Because I like option 3 the best, but I'm nervous if we can afford it. And the other question is, with option 3, is there enough parking around the back? You know, I know we're gonna have for the dumpsters and the recycling, but we do need a little parking around the building. So is there gonna be enough parking for that, for
Yeah,
a few cars, administration, or whatever?
Yeah, so I'll start backwards with that. We would be able to get some parking in. Service would probably not, certainly wouldn't get really onto the site as much as need to be delivered from, I believe, roadside. I'm sorry, we have parking. We are able to get the service road in. It's a little bit tight. As far as the options are concerned,
Yeah.
the reason why we are looking at some options that you might say don't pass the eye test is that the MSBA has wanted to ensure that the scope of studies is inclusive and has a range that's under study. We initially put out there, I think it was an additional 4 or 5 other studies. Some sound pretty close to something you've described.
Yeah.
That did not prove desirable as it went through the conversations with both the MSBA and the school building committee. So those options were not brought forward for additional
It
study.
just seems like we, you know, I mean, Mr. Mayor Samaras, you know the building down there. What's gonna
I
work,
think I
what's
can
not gonna work.
I think I can answer your safety question. There's no, I have no concern regarding the safety. And the issue, they haven't even talked about an extended day. They talked about, with the tighter scheduling, making 40 rooms available as a cushion between the construction. I'm saying if we really need more, we can have an extended day, which would actually give you another 40 rooms. I mean, so the separation could be something else. So I don't see that as a problem. But where we are right now is, this is what has been negotiated with the MSBA, and we have to bring this in as a package. It's really no choice at this particular time, but we're gonna have to make the decision as to whether we can afford it at the time. But I think we've got a lot better information. But the next meeting, we will have the prices in front of us, so that will be our reality test.
Okay. And then I just wanna make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble. Wanna make sure we have enough time to get this out to the community so they have enough input, because we know how important that is here.
No, that's the purpose.
Okay.
Actually, I was gonna state, thank you for this outline, but I was made aware that there was a possibility we wouldn't have had this outline tonight. And I was really concerned. So I'm just advising, we have to make sure that our next meetings, that there's no question that we will have all the necessary material presented to the group. Because without this, there's no way of making a decision. You know. Councilor Kennedy, do you have any other?
Just as a final item, I know people on this committee get the information and the materials, but it would be good going forward if we could make sure that everybody on the school committee and everybody on the city council was included on that, so that they get those materials as well.
Yes, Council, absolutely. We do that right now. So we send, the SPC gets all of the notification, the City Council, obviously, and then what we do is we send it over to the superintendent and to his executive assistant, which she then forwards out to the school committee as well.
So will everybody get this package?
Yes, they will, Councilor.
Okay,
It will also be on the website as well.
okay, thank you.
No, thank you, Councilor Kennedy. You're correct regarding that. Senator Donahue, do you have any?
No, that was my question, whether it will be put on the website, so that's good that it will be part of the school building committee website. Is that what it will be under the City of Lowell?
Yes, Senator, there's a button on our homepage, the Lowell
Right.
High School project, and it will be under that.
So it will be there?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
great. I just have one comment. Thank you for letting me crash the school building committee tonight. I know I'm coming in a little bit
You're more
early,
than
but
welcome.
thank you.
But to answer your question too, Mr. Lee, by providing a lot of this information, I think we'll be able to better make a determination after that. It's just having this in our hand. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd.
Seconded by over there. I didn't even have a chance to say it.